Anthony Joshua has warned that he is motivated to punish and brutalize Jarrell Miller. I'm going to quote Anthony Joshua directly here. He says, Miller is big, strong, can throw hooks, has a good work rate. It's interesting because I'll be the first one to test him and see how good he really is. This is his chance to prove himself to the world. It's not just about Jarrell Miller. It's about perfecting my craft. It's good to work on the position of my hands, fluidity, perfecting my weight. Then at the end of it, I get to punish Miller. I said I will reconstruct his face. I'm looking forward to seeing what his face looks like at the end of the fight. So yeah, those are the words of Anthony Joshua talking about Miller. Now he talks about working on his fluidity. That's something he's often been criticized for, right? His fluidity or lack thereof. And I personally noticed more fluidity in the Alexander Povetkin fight than we've seen from him before. And watching it several times over, I noticed that it was actually midway through that fight that Anthony Joshua changed his style up. Because early on in the fight, it was the typical Joshua, hands up, jabbing, and looking a little clunky, a little stiff, a little robotic. And Povetkin was able to get to him while he was in that stance. But midway through that fight, Anthony Joshua's left hand came down. He started loosening up and he kind of abandoned the typical Anthony Joshua style that Robert McCracken has taught him and started using a much more fluid kind of style. And to me, it actually worked a lot better for him. And of course, he ended up taking Alexander Povetkin out while fighting out of that particular kind of stance. So yeah, he's looking at different ways of positioning his hands, working on his fluidity, finding his perfect weight as well, because he was criticized in the Klitschko fight and of course the Carlos Takam fight for being too muscle bound, too heavy. And since then he's, dropped quite a few pounds, lost quite a bit of muscle and looked more fluid, and hasn't gassed as badly in the Joseph Parker and Povetkin fights. So going to be interesting to see what he weighs against Miller. Going to be interesting to see what tactics he adopts against Miller. I mean, will he come out in the first round and really look to stamp his authority on the fight and hit Miller as hard as he possibly can to get Miller's respect and prevent Miller from doing what he normally does, which is just steamroll opponents? Going to be very interesting. And I do think that Anthony Joshua, as I keep saying, if he cannot keep Miller off of him, if Miller can take Joshua's power or block it or deflect it and not be intimidated by it, then Joshua's going to need stamina. He's going to need to be in good shape because it's going to be a long fight. And I think that Anthony Joshua is going to need good defense on the inside. And Joshua's defense on the inside normally is good, right? He tucks up very well. He's got, a very good guard. It's difficult to penetrate when he decides to use it. And he can also counter with short hooks from that very tight guard that he has. So he has some fundamentals there, which should stand him in good stead against Jarrell Miller. But be that as it may, he's going to be giving away a considerable amount of weight in this fight. We're not yet sure what Jarrell Miller is going to be coming in at, but he normally weighs 300 pounds, give or take 20. He's a very, very big man. And it's going to be interesting also to see what Jarrell Miller's tactics are in this fight, because he does have the ability to box Jarrell Miller. I know he hasn't shown it in recent years, but if you look at his earlier professional fights, and certainly if you look at his sparring footage when he was in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko, he had some good movement there. Nice jab, moving around. In fact, there's been a couple of open workouts which were in the last year or so where Jarrell Miller was up on his toes, moving around, popping a jab. And I think he did it briefly against Johan Duopa, kind of moved around a little bit late in that fight. So it's going to be interesting to see if he tries any of that, because he knows that AJ has a reputation for being clunky, robotic, and stiff. I'm sure he would have looked at many AJ fights where AJ had trouble, including in the Olympics against Erislandi Savon. I'm sure he would have looked at that and said to himself, you know what? Someone who's slick, someone with fluidity can give AJ issues. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what tactics both guys adopt and who comes out on top. I still think, as I've been saying all along, sorry to repeat myself, but if Miller can take Joshua's power from a stylistic point of view, I think Joshua's in for a rough night, a very, very rough night. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if Jarrell Miller managed to pull off the upset. I'm not picking him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled it off. You know, if he can take AJ's power. This is not like Lomachenko versus Crawler. All right, I didn't even bother talking about that fight because to me that wasn't a fight. I posted on in my Facebook boxing group what fights are on this weekend, and don't tell me Lomachenko versus Crawler because that's not a fight. No disrespect to Crawler, you know, he was the mandatory challenger. He took the fight like he was supposed to, and you know tried to do what he tried to do, but that was never going to be a fight. This Anthony Joshua versus Jarrell Miller, do not mistake this for Lomachenko versus Crawler. You know, Joshua's obviously no Lomachenko, and Jarrell Miller's no Anthony Crawler. All right, he's a lot more imposing and dangerous than that in his weight class. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Joshua talking about the Miller fight. He wants to bust up his face and brutalize him. And I do have to refer to this interview again with David Haye, which is a really, really good. I can't recommend this highly enough because David Haye talks about a lot of stuff here. And in this interview, David Haye is talking about the philosophy or one of the main aspects of his boxing style, David Haye, when he was in his prime. And it sounds very simplistic, okay, to a lot of people. But David Haye, one of the key aspects of his style was hitting his opponent as hard as he possibly could early in the fight. And what does this do? Well, if the opponent is able to take the shot, you know, and you know, the fight doesn't end early, maybe he doesn't get hit flush, maybe he gets hit on the chest or in the arm or on the shoulder, but he gets intimidated because Haye hits him harder than he's ever been hit before, and he hits him fast. You know, he tries to throw a jab, bam! Haye hits him with a shot, barely missed his chin, maybe landed just on his chest next to his face. And he thinks to himself, geez, I don't want to get hit in the face with a shot like that. All of a sudden, he's reluctant to let the jab go. All of a sudden, a guy who normally fights aggressively, normally comes out all guns blazing, is being a lot more careful about what he's doing and what he's throwing. Because David Haye hit him harder than he's ever been hit before and hit him faster than he's been hit before. And once David Haye has the fighter's respect by hitting them hard early in the fight, then he can relax a little bit, start moving around, you know, getting into his groove. But early on in a fight, David Haye will concentrate on hitting the guy as hard as humanly possible early to establish respect. And maybe Anthony Joshua is going to need to do something like that against Jarrell Miller. Maybe he's going to need to load up with something and hit him very hard early in the fight to let Miller know, you know, that bulldozer routine that you do against those other guys, it's not happening here. It's not happening here. So, yeah, and you know, people will underestimate how effective that was for David Haye. And not just David Haye, but many other fighters. Sometimes you'll see a guy in a fight and normally he's aggressive and normally he throws loads of punches and normally he's so assertive and confident. But in one particular fight, he's not letting his hands go. He's not taking chances. And you're like, what's he doing? He's not even trying. No. He is trying. It's just that he got hit harder than he's ever been hit before. And he knows this guy can land that shot again, or he feels like the guy can land the shot again because the guy's sharp. So he's in a position he's never been in before. He's been hit harder than he's ever felt. And the guy is fast. The guy can land the shots. You see, most top professionals are not in the business of getting battered in a fight and taking, you know, 5 good shots to land one of their own. Most top pros are not in the business for that. You do get some, you know, you do get the Brandon Rioses and the Marcus Maidanas and them kind of people there. But most fighters are not like them. Most top pros don't get hit flush that much. And they want to keep it that way. But when they're in a position where, okay, this guy, you know, I'm never going to outbox this guy. But if I take a chance, he's going to hit me harder than I've ever been hit before, and I don't think I can take his power. In a situation like that, that top professional, that top world-class elite level fighter is often going to think to himself, you know what? I don't want to take the chance. Because normally I feel like I can take the guy's power if I take a chance. But in this situation, I feel like I can't take the guy's power. And I feel like, in certain instances, I don't think I can even hurt this guy if I hit him. He's too big for me. David Haye talked about when he fought Nikolai Valuev. And how when he hit Valuev's body, it was like hitting a heavy bag. He couldn't believe how strong and just how solid he was. Obviously, a huge man, Nikolai Valuev. And maybe it's going to be something similar for AJ. Obviously, Jarrell Miller is not naturally as big as Valuev. He's taking a lot of protein shakes and eating a lot of burgers and stuff like that to get up to 300 pounds. Early on in his career, he was like 250. I think even as low as in the 240s at one stage early on in his career, whereas Nikolai Valuev was just a man mountain, naturally enormous, 7 feet tall, 7'2", whatever it is. Just a naturally big man. But still, it just shows you that punching power. See, this is another thing I sometimes get from people, is that punching power is overrated and you don't really need punching. No, punching power is one of the best things to have in boxing. If you are a tremendous puncher, trust me, it is one of the greatest things you can have, including if you decide to, go down the route of trying to outbox somebody. If you're trying to outbox a guy and you can't hurt him and you can't intimidate him with your power, and he's a good pressure fighter, you're in for a rough night. A real rough night. But if you intend to outbox the guy, but you've got real serious punching power, then it's going to be a much easier night, because the guy's going to think twice before he lets his hands go. The guy's going to be more circumspect when he's walking you down. A good example would be Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Nonito Donaire. Nonito Donaire was running through people prior to fighting Rigondeaux, knocking people out and doing all sorts of good stuff. When he fought Rigondeaux hit him hard with that left hand early in the fight. Real hard. And established respect. And he was then able to relax and outbox Nonito Donaire. Late on in that fight, Donaire got a little desperate. He managed to drop Rigondeaux, but then he got cracked. In fact, I can't remember if it was before or after the knockdown. I think it might have been after the knockdown. He got cracked real hard. When he started opening up, Rigondeaux was able to land on him even better. Yeah, that's what you have to understand. When guys start taking chances, they're going to get cracked. And late in that fight, Donaire started taking chances after he dropped Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux cracked him in the eye. You remember that terrible swelling he had on his eye? Rigondeaux landed them horrible, bony little knuckles on Nonito Donaire's eye, and it swelled up terrible. But that was an example of a guy outboxing someone, but punching power playing a major part of how Rigondeaux was able to, outbox the guy. It wasn't just Rigondeaux's skills. It was the fact Rigondeaux had power that established respect. So punching power is a very important thing to have in boxing. It's always an advantage to have it. Adonis Stevenson, same way. He used punching power when he was in his younger years. He used that punching power to establish respect and intimidate guys so they wouldn't just come at him with reckless abandon. Obviously, you don't always need punching power. Some guys who don't have power are able to be successful, like the Andre Wards of the world. Okay, I don't want to say Ward had no power at all, but he certainly wasn't a one-punch knockout artist. He certainly wasn't known as a concussive puncher. But with the physical strength, the skills, the tactics, the boxing brain, Ward was able to be an elite fighter without being a serious puncher. But, anybody going around saying you don't really need punching power or punching power is overrated in boxing, no, it's not. Punching power is an amazing thing to have when you're a fighter, if you're blessed with tremendous punching power. Obviously, you need to make sure that you don't fall in love with the punching power to the point where you're neglecting your other skills. It's like, what David Haye said about establishing respect early. And then after you've established respect, then you can, he said he would drop his hands and he can just get into the groove and do what he wanted with the opponent. But you had to establish the respect first, and having the punching power allows you to do that. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about everything I talked about in this video. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.